Good evening. Today is Monday, the 29th of March, 2021. The time is 8 p.m. in Canberra. We will begin the weekly Bangla radio program from Canberra 2XX Community Radio Station. This program is being broadcasted by the courtesy of Community Broadcasting Foundation Limited and Bangladesh Australia Association in Canberra. Every Monday at 8 p.m, this program is broadcasted on FM 98.3 MHz. Tonight the program is presented by me, Adiba Ahmed,
and me, Adnin Zahid.
Tonight's program will discuss Women's Day, Women's History Month, women in leadership, the current climate of women in the workplace and the challenges that they face, as well as the portrayal of women in pop culture and media. The Check-in Canberra app is now mandatory at many Canberra businesses, venues and facilities. It's a secure and easy way to check in. The data collected is held by ACG Health for 28 days and will only be accessed if it is required for contact tracing purposes. So please remember to check in every time you enter a venue, like a cafe, restaurant, club, beauty salon, hairdresser, swimming pool, fitness centre, cultural institution or entertainment venue. Don't have a smartphone? Ask the venue to check you in using the Check-in Canberra app's business profile. Protect yourself and your loved ones. Use the Check-in Canberra app. For more information and to download the app, visit covid19.act.gov.au/check-in-Canberra. That is covid19.act.gov.au/check-in-Canberra. Women's History Month is an annual declared month that highlights the contributions of women to events in history and contemporary society. It is celebrated during March in the United States, the United Kingdom and Australia, and it corresponds with International Women's Day, that's on March 8th.
Commemorations began in 1978 as Women's History Week in Sonoma County, California, and it was championed by Gerda Lerner and the National Women's History Alliance to be recognized as a national week in 1980, and then month in 1987 in the United States, spreading internationally thereafter.
Women's History Month was first celebrated in Australia in 2000, initiated by Helen Leonard, convener of the National Women's Media Centre, working with the Women's Electoral Lobby. The organisation of annual Women's History Month celebrations is incorporated as part of the work of the Australian Women's History Forum.
So I thought, it's Women's History Month this month. We had International Women's Day a couple of weeks ago, and the current climate in Australia when it comes to women. So there's a lot going on at the moment. If you aren't aware, quite serious allegations have been made by former Liberal staffer Brittany Higgins in the fact that she was raped in Parliament House by a colleague under then serving and still currently serving Minister Linda Reynolds. In fact, the event was said to have occurred in Linda Reynolds' office. So this has sparked a lot of interest into the way women are treated in the workplace, and more specifically sexual misconduct in the workplace, and especially the fact that this has come from our Parliament. It's very concerning, because if this can happen in Parliament House, it can happen anywhere, and it does happen anywhere. But the fact is that it happening in Parliament House is so prevalent, but yet people like Brittany Higgins don't come forward. So Brittany Higgins has actually taken a tremendous step coming forward and laying out these allegations. And since then, there's also been allegations made against the current serving Attorney General Christian Porter of a rape some years ago now. The victim is now unfortunately deceased. But again, a lot of this discussion has now sparked a lot of interest into the culture of the Australian government. And there is currently a review by current Standing Sexual Discrimination Officer Kate Jenkins. it would be amiss to go forward without mentioning currently what's going on. But I wanted to focus a little bit more on the positives of Women's History Month and kind of how we celebrate or things that we've been doing or things that are worth celebrating during this month. I know during International Women's Day I tuned into the UN Women Australia broadcast of the International Women's Day event, and the theme was really interesting. It was women in leadership.
How has your experiences been in leadership?
Oh gosh, I'm still very early on in my career, but I do see it. I do see that there are fewer women in leadership positions from my experience in the private sector. Coming over to the public sector quite recently, I've been actually quite refreshing to see that there's actually high numbers of females in leadership positions in the public service. I was very surprised, and I wasn't sure why I was surprised, but I looked at some of the statistics on the Australian Public Service Commission's website, and in fact 60+% of the Australian public service is women, so the majority are women. And when you do break that down by leadership level as well, there isn't too much disparity amongst the two genders.
Yeah, we reached parity.
Yeah, and I think that's something to celebrate. That's amazing, and I've been reading a lot actually about this topic as well. I've been reading, it's a really, really good book. I would highly recommend anyone to read it. It's written by Julie Gillard. And it's called Women in Leadership. And she wrote it actually over the last 2-3 years, so 2018 through to 2020. So it's very relevant, it's contemporary, and the angle that it takes actually is, of course, it looks into political leaders, Julie Gillard being the former Prime Minister of Australia. She's actually the head of the Global Institute of Women in Leadership, headquartered in the UK, in London. So she's very passionate, very knowledgeable on this topic. But what she's done actually is she has gone around the world and interviewed women in politics all across the world, starting from Hillary Clinton, Jacinta Ardern, Michelle Bachelet, Christine Lagarde, lots of different female politicians from different countries to understand some of the issues, or if some of the issues that are faced by women, are they gendered? Are they localized to a specific country, or how does the experience differ? And overwhelmingly, the conclusion drawn from the book is that no matter where you are, which country you're in, third world country or a very developed country, the experience that women in leadership face is the same across all those countries.
That's very interesting. I would have thought. I'm guessing there's maybe some nuance, little differences. I'll definitely look into this book. So the book's not about her and her time.
It does make reference to her times in Parliament. So of course, Julie Gillard, her entire time in Parliament, a lot of it was played by the fact that she wasn't married. She didn't have children. She was deliberately barren. She was a so-called witch. There was just so many things, and of course, yes, it does delve deeper into that. But she also kind of compares her experiences to other women in parliaments across the world. And sees where are the differences, where are the similarities. But overwhelmingly, the similarities are pretty overwhelming.
The similarities are the same.
The similarities are the same in the fact that, look, let's not even go into it because it does get a little bit dark when you think about, some of the challenges, just brutal challenges that women face. There's no sugarcoating it. There are definitely gendered challenges that women in leadership face across the world. But one of the positives, I think, and one of the things I took away from the book was the importance of role modelling. So, and that's what we were talking about before, in the fact that women seeing other women in leadership roles makes that position a lot more attainable. And where we're both working at the moment, we're seeing that. We're seeing representation is the first step. When you see representation, if you don't have representation, then you're not going to get women, even interested in going down that path in the first place. And that's the first step. If you don't even get that interest in the first place, then there's no way that they can start being active or they can start taking the next steps.
That sounds really, really cool. I'm going to check that book out for sure.
I recommend anyone to check it out because it's just really relevant, and it doesn't I talked to a couple of colleagues. They actually read it as part of a book club for work.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Your work's so cool.
We read it kind of in the diversity and inclusion group, and because it was International Women's Day and Women's History Month coming up, we thought, why not read a book relevant to the topic? Yeah, it was a recommendation. It was actually something I've been looking into for a while. In fact, one of the leaders in there, Jacinta Ardern, who is the current serving Prime Minister of New Zealand, and she is only the second woman in history to have given birth while in prime ministership, the first woman to give birth while in office was Benazir Bhutto, Prime Minister of Pakistan. Yes. But that was quite a few years ago, and now Jacinda Ardern has really, not just because of the fact that she's the second woman ever to give birth or be a mother whilst in Parliament, but the fact that her leadership style is so incredibly unique.
And yet, you know, she still faces so much media criticism in the sense that her husband is always constantly... Sorry, is it a partner?
Partner.
Oh, my apologies.
Yeah, I was going to say, he has engaged, he has proposed, but they're yet to be married. That's, yeah.
Yeah, that, like, you know, people say, oh, your partner is like a house husband.
He's a primary caregiver, but but it's just, like, the fact that it's 2021 and that's still something that's out of the norm, or that's still something that people go out of their way to, you know, to identify that, oh, but your husband is the primary caregiver, or it's actually like a phenomenon. It's just like where are the kids? Oh, but you're here, where are the kids? At home with their father? Like, it should be somewhat normalised today, but you're right, it's not. But she's actually normalising it a lot more.
Because if we're seeking equality, we're not just seeking equality because we're wanting to, you know, raise women to the same standard that men have, but just to seek equality in all facets of life. And yeah, definitely, if a man is happy to do that, and it's what he wants to do in terms of raising his family, nothing wrong with that. The fact that we have paternity leave as well, that's as far as I'm aware, like, paternity leave is readily available and granted.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not just women that play a part in equality. Men have the part to play as well. Like, the United Nations, I believe, they had revealed that it's going to take 100 years to achieve gender parity in terms of equal pay. 100 years.
Yeah.
Like, that's a crazy statistic. And UN Women in Australia are working towards bridging the gap and making that into 10 years. But women can't do it alone.
No.
Men have a part to play in that as well.
Needs to be everybody.
Absolutely. But the thing I was going to say as well, in fact, with Jacinda Ardern as Prime Minister, New Zealand, our neighbouring country, is actually... So every single year, the World Economic Forum puts together a report and ranks countries based on their gender equality. And they do it based on gender equality in quite a few different areas, including politics, education, pay, and there's one other factor that I'm forgetting at the moment.
When you say education, does that mean, like, academia? Like, what does
I think it's academia. I think it's academia, or the number of women that are successfully completing schooling.
Yes.
So, and I think there might be, I'm not sure exactly the exact metrics, but they're the four kind of areas. But it was crazy because, like, New Zealand is in number 6, so they're very, gender-wise, a very progressive country.
Where are we?
We're in the 40s. I think we're 44.
Oh, that is so disappointing.
America's in the 50s.
Oh, yeah, that's not a surprise.
Yeah, so, but, like, you know, Australia's in the 40s, like, and our neighbouring country, New Zealand, is number 6. We still have only had the one female Prime Minister. New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern is the third.
She's the third?
She's the third female Prime Minister in New Zealand.
I didn't even know
Yeah, there was Jenny Shipley and Helen Clark before her.
Wow.
Yeah, and it goes to show role modelling. If you've had that one female leader, it's so much easier for that second or third to then continue. And then once you get to, like, that at least greater than one number, it's a lot easier for other women to see themselves in that position and then work towards it. Whereas in Australia, you've only had the one.
And what I would also pose is, I would never ever criticise Julia Gillard for the way that her term ended in as a Prime Minister, right? There were multiple factors.
Absolutely.
And I think that the way that she was treated, unfortunately, shows that Australia has a long way to go. Before they try to encourage women to reach the highest levels of leadership.
Yeah, 100%. And these things that are coming out, like, when it comes to Brittany Higgins and things, it's not encouraging. It's discouraging. It's discouraging women to enter. So everything that's going on in Australia at the moment, it can have ramifications for the future generations of politicians in Australia. And the fact is, like, politicians should be representative of the people.
Exactly.
And they're not. When we, I guess, like, put a spotlight on what's actually going on, what the culture is like, it's not a culture that you'd want to be part of. Or it's not a culture that women are welcomed at all.
Yeah, because if you're aware that we're going into politics, basically, if there's a risk simply because you're a woman, then who would be doing that? Like,
exactly. At the end of the day, like, there's been so many... Theresa May. Theresa May as well. There was a lot of facets to her dismissal as well. In the UK, you know, Brexit and other things that were going on. But there was also always gendered aspects to her prime ministership. And I think even around her time, there were lots of female politicians that just basically the amount of online hate that women get is disproportionately, I guess, just online criticism is disproportionately targeted towards women and men. That is a statistic that I'm quoting. Like, it is a known fact, and the volume and the sheer relentlessness of, just think about the language that sometimes it is used against female. It doesn't matter how high their position or rank will be. It's derogatory. It's deeply sexual. You know, like and like sexually violent. They
act because you would never say those things about a man.
Never say those things about
you know that this occurs to women on a very common basis, and that's why you feel that you can say it.
And it's women across, like, it's societal. It's not like, oh, it only happens to politicians. It happens to girls as young as 12. Like young girls. Like it's systematic. It's insane. But it goes to the point that it is tough, but women can get through, and they've seen people get through and get through to the top, and it is a bit of a, as much as I have to say, it is a bit of a survival game.
We can only do it if we support each other. Do you know something?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, do you know much about internalized misogyny?
I do not.
Okay, this is where I can shine a little bit. So internalized misogyny is this concept that because of the way that our current society socializes people growing up, if we're saying that we're living in a patriarchy, the patriarchy actually grooms women and socializes women to hate parts of themselves.
Right.
And when they recognize those flaws in other women, have you ever experienced this? And of course, you know, if you don't want to say it, that's fine. But have you ever disliked a girl just for a really, like, you weren't 100% sure what the reason was, or even if you were sure of the reason, you were maybe a little bit ashamed to admit it. Have you ever experienced something like that?
I think so. I think I know what you're referring to. It's the fact that women are penalised or judged more harshly, and this is not like an internal thing, for stepping out of gender roles. That's just a result of the way that we've been brought up in the conditioning. And that's the way that,
yes, both of us as women of colour who come from conservative backgrounds, I don't mean to like throw us under the bus or anything like that, but I'm sure growing up, I would say I do it less now, but growing up, I would definitely judge other women.
Yeah, growing up, actually.
I would definitely judge other women if they were not...
left of centre, or
if
they were doing something outside of the societally defined.
Particularly if they were of the same background as me. Like, I would make excuses for other women because I'm like, oh, you know, they didn't grow up in the same way. Like, that's different. That's fine if they're doing them. But I would hold women of my background to the same standard that I was raised at. But that's not fair at all. Every person is.
So is that what internalized misogyny is?
Let me actually get the official definition. So the official definition of misogyny is the hatred of, or contempt for, or prejudice against women or girls. Women who experience internalized misogyny may express it through minimizing the value of women, mistrusting other women, and believing gender bias in favor of men.
So they start to believe in the misogyny, or the misogyny becomes a part.
They believe it's true. Something that I've actually heard someone say in my life, which is she told me that she doesn't have many female friends. And when we were talking about it more, she was like, yeah, I just feel like they're just too much drama. I much prefer to hang with males, and I don't think they're as dramatic. However, over our long history of friendship, she's told me about her group of male friends, and I would say there's definitely been drama. So I mean, it's not necessarily my role to educate her further, but it's something that I've slowly been talking to her about, and I think she sees it more and more now as we get older. I think there's a maturity aspect as well. I think we're socialized to always be seeking approval of our peers.
Women,
yes, women.
Definitely.
I think both. I think everyone is. Because men definitely seek approval of other men, and they do it in different ways.
Okay.
And women definitely seek approval of other women, but more than that, more commonly, women seek approval from men. And women seek approval from men in many different facets.
But I think the standard that women are held to in society is a lot higher, as in they're put on a pedestal almost, so they have to, this like good girl personality or a mothering or those very gendered they're very gendered roles.
Yeah.
And if a woman steps outside of that, then she's held a lot more accountable, and she falls a lot. The crash is a lot bigger.
Oh yeah, and people want her to fail.
Yeah, people want her to fail 100%. I know, it's just kind of like, oh, like, what are you doing here? Go back to what you're doing. Like, no wonder you're crap at this or whatever. Like, it doesn't matter what field it is. A lot of these hypotheses actually are really well analysed in Julia Gillard's book. There's 8 hypotheses and 8 experiences, 8 people that they talk to about through these hypotheses. They ask the same set of questions to each. It's almost like a controlled environment. Because it's really hard. It's really, really hard to actually conduct gender-based experiments. Not because you don't have a controlled environment. There are so many different factors and variables that can affect the results of an experiment. So it's really hard to do controlled testing, say, as you could do for like a scientific or laboratory experiment, and to get an understanding of, is this a result of a gendered issue or a gendered bias or not? So that's the other thing. But a lot of the things that we're saying, that we've spoken about, it's common knowledge almost,
or at least it's common knowledge to women.
Yeah, that's also true. Yeah.
I think that just the way that society still currently is really unfortunate, because I've seen with the current things that are occurring, where I guess we would hope to see that men are trying to support us in this mission. Definitely seeing some support from men. Just as I wouldn't say all women are supporting, I can't say all women, all men are.
There's actually a group of women, I don't know what they refer to, but they actually like the patriarchy and like being...
Yeah, do you know what I think? I think they were traumatized in their childhood.
Potentially, but there's like some people that are literally like, no, like you're a woman, like you abide by what the man tells you to do. You know, you behave in the way, or your set of roles by God or whatever power or whatever kind of ideology they believe in. It's very prevalent in America.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Have you watched The Handmaid's Tale?
Oh god, I don't want to, because I know what
there is. I watched that recently actually, and there's, if you want to,
that's horrifying.
It's horrifying.
Yeah.
The level of sexism and just it's a dystopian world, and actually world setting in it was America. It was America that was taken away. It was very slow. It was first women weren't allowed to work. And then women weren't allowed to do this or leave the house, and then it slowly turned into a dictatorship where women were just used for their bodies to reproduce, and they were given out as handmaids to go and live in the houses of rich people, so rich people could then...
So it was only just rich men? Or was it every woman?
It was rich families.
Yeah.
So the underlying setting of this dystopia was that women, the world has gone so far that fertility is a really big issue, so they can't reproduce. So wealthy families would buy fertile women, treat them as servants, and once a month do the act in the hope of getting their children.
Wow.
It's insane. They've seen as second-class citizens, not allowed to read, and then these women were all educated, they were all performing jobs, and then overnight they were captured and taken to this new country of Gilead, which was America, and then it's insane. It's worth a watch.
Wow.
It's insane. Even men have come out and said, like, I've never seen something so, like, just crushing to the female spirit.
While we're on the topic of media, there have been many popular TV shows and movies that have included the rape of a woman, right?
Yes.
However, there's also a TV show called The Outlander, and in it there is the rape of a man.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Is it a Scottish TV show? It's set in Scotland?
Okay,
that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, it's set in...
I know of the show, yeah.
Yeah, it's set in Scotland. So while, in a way, we've almost kind of accepted our rape of a woman...
Yeah, it's almost like, okay...
those were the times. They justify... Like, for example, I loved Game of Thrones. And the thing is, Game of Thrones, there is quite a few rape scenes. Okay. And the thing is, at the time, I kind of went along with the narrative that they posed, which is this was this would have been common when this sort of power struggle and men were like, it was like this, rape would have happened.
Yeah.
But you still didn't need to show it to the extent that you
Right.
did. The reasons that she actually gave for putting in these specific scenes, and they're only towards women, the reasons are just not good enough. It's just sensationalism. It's just wanting something to be talked about.
Yeah.
The scene in The Outlander, there has not ever been as much outcry against a scene in
What
terms
was the outcry? Like, what was...
from men, because there was a man getting raped.
What were they saying?
Oh, they were like, you know...
Just like, oh, you shouldn't have shown that.
You shouldn't have
like,
shown that. It was too far.
What?
It's not in line with the
men get raped too.
Exactly.
It's an accurate representation of society. Like, I mean, there's a sense of shame, or there's, I don't know, there's so many factors to it, but many men that do get raped don't come out about it at all.
Yeah, because of the stigma, but the stigma exists because of the patriarchy.
Yeah.
It exists because of other men's approval.
Yeah, and it goes to, like, in fact, like, mental health statistics as well. Like, overwhelmingly, a lot of the number of people that experience suicidal thoughts, or the number of suicides that have gone through with the actual act, there's quite a high number of men in those statistics as well. Both sides. There's a role for both men and women to play, and I was wanting to mention the point around the March for Justice that occurred
in Canberra.
In Canberra, it occurred in all major cities, but
wasn't it just a couple of days ago, babe? Yeah.
So I think the epicenter was Canberra because of everything that was going on. So there was a congregation at Parliament House, on the lawns of Parliament House. Brittany Higgins spoke, and it's actually a global protest that happens around the world. And you know, so Australia, and with everything going on in Australia, there was a lot of emphasis on the protest this year. But one of the things that I noticed, and a lot of people noticed, was like, where was the men? Where were the men? Like, we need both genders to step up for these issues. It affects everyone.
Yeah, I did notice there was a overwhelming difference of the genders. It was primarily women. And in fact, again, you know, comments on Facebook, comments on Reddit. For example, on Reddit, there were multiple threads about it. And what were the comments? The comments were like, what are they doing this for? You can click the article and you can read it in the first few sentences.
Okay, interesting.
More should be done from higher levels of Parliament.
Yeah, no, and it just goes to again show like just the lack of I don't know if it's understanding or just
it's a lack of empathy. It's just a lack of empathy.
Yeah, and that's a big starting point, is just empathy and really understanding the issues and the plights that are faced by women in this day and age.
I can appreciate it's not easy to step into another gender's shoes.
That's true, because I don't often step into the shoes of men.
And again, that's something we should try to take the time to try to do as well, because I definitely don't want to denigrate any of the struggles that men have as well. Yeah, I mean, then what's sort of the takeaway that we want?
I think the takeaway is definitely just keep strong, women and men. Keep fighting. Keep talking about these issues as we've spoken about today. The best thing that you can do, and in Grace Tame, Australian of the Year's words, is just keep talking. How are we supposed to know if there's an issue if no one's talking about it or no one's raising it? That's the best thing that we can do, is just create awareness. Continue celebrating, the wins, even however small they may be. And, keep pushing forward and paving the path, even though it might just be pebbles at the moment.
Yeah. Support each other and look out for each other.
We have now reached the end of our program. We hope that you have enjoyed tonight's program. We invite you to send your opinions of Bangla Radio Canberra to the following email, banglaradio@gmail.com. You are invited to follow Bangla Radio on Twitter and Facebook. If you join our Bangla Radio Facebook group, we'll send you our weekly program description. The next Bangla Radio program will be broadcasted next Monday at 8 p.m. We welcome you to join us. Wherever you are, we hope that you stay well, in peace and happiness. Good night.